Greetings, geeks. We have another Trev and Mike episode of Geeking Off the Page. Trevor, how are you doing this week?
Pretty good, pretty good. Some strange things happened, but we'll get into that later.
But Stranger Things.
And Stranger Things indeed. That's what we're going to lead off with. Mike, you're up.
All right, Stranger Things. So basically, I've been mostly up north in Canada. Haven't watched a whole lot of things, but one of the things I have watched was Stranger Things. And like I said last week, I was not big into this whole series ever since season 2, season 3. Season 3, I thought everything got butchered. I was like, done with it. Then all of a sudden, a bunch of friends online were saying, you know what? I actually like this better than Obi-Wan. It's like, really? Better than Obi-Wan? Then I watched Obi-Wan. It's like, okay, well, that's still a kind of low bar. But then my sons watched it, and they're like, Dad, you have to watch this. Now, backstory, we were up here at the family cottage, and the first part of the season was released. I kept walking in on season or episode 1, 2, 3, and it looked like absolute trash. Everything I saw was not impressed with. It's like, this looks like garbage. But then we got home. It's like, Dad, you have to start from episode 4. It's like, okay, they were adamant about it. I trust their opinions. All right, let's start watching from episode 4. And it was pretty good. And of course, I was working long hours and sleeping through half of episodes and stuff. But the stuff I was awake for was really good. The last 2 episodes dropped. And I understand what the hype was about. So the last 2 episodes were essentially movie length episodes. And there was a lot of redemption that happened. So if you watch season 1, a little bit of season 2, in the last couple of episodes, like, it's a pretty strong finish. And it's a hard thing to discuss with someone who hasn't watched it yet. I know, Trevor, you said go all spoilers, so
go ahead.
I will.
Spoil it out.
So, without just giving a recap of what happens in the episode, what I liked about season 1 is it felt very nostalgic in the way those 80s horror movies, those thrillers were, the Jaws, where you don't know what's going to happen. You're kind of, you're afraid the whole time because there's so much information you don't know. There's scary monsters, there's people getting killed, there's little kids in jeopardy, and you don't know what's going to happen. And even as a parent showing this to your children, like, are they going to see something they shouldn't? Like, I don't know. Right. But by the time you get to season 4, it's like, yeah, you kind of know what it's all about. Like, you understand the upside down, the monsters, there's going to be some jump scares and some gore. But it's still pretty family friendly. But the unknown is missing. It's sort of like what they did with the midichlorians in Star Wars. It's like, let's explain everything. Or what they did in X-Files, where at the beginning it was all these different mysteries, and then it's like, yeah, let's explain everything. There's aliens, government conspiracy, and it's all tied together. It's all one big plot. It's like, I know the plot. Or even like Wolverine from X-Men, this mysterious mutant. Like, you don't, he's Logan, he's this old, he's done this, like Weapon X. Everything.
Yeah, when you get the whole story, it's you've lost the whole mystique to it.
Right. So it falls into that sort of territory. All that said, it was a pretty damn good episode. Like, if I was to remove it from season 1 and it was just its own thing, it's like, yeah, it's a pretty damn good thriller kind of episodic movie thing to watch on TV with the family.
Cool.
There's this character Eddie in it who's part of this Hellfire Club, which is the D&D group, and and I've had a friend just like him in high school, so you have this nostalgic connection to the character. But there's a key moment in the last arc where he has to divert all the demons in the Upside Down by playing Metallica Master of Puppets. And of course, the kids watch this ahead of time. It's like, Dad, what's the song? It's like, Master. It's like, Master of Puppets? Yeah, that's it. It's like, oh my God, classic. So there's a fun thing about that, just being a parent where the kids are rocking out to Metallica. It's like, yeah, that's the best moment of the episode. All this stuff is happening. Then when I watched it, like this guy's just standing on the roof, just playing the guitar. Again, it's a little bit comedic. It's kind of parody, and that's what Stranger Things kind of turned into. It's almost the same thing that happened with X-Files, where it's a parody of itself to a certain extent. But that sequence was absolutely epic. So, like, if nothing else, everybody has to watch that. So yeah, that's sort of like my loose kind of recap of Stranger Things. I did like Hopper in this one. Season 3, I thought it was trash. He was what's the name? David Arbor?
Yeah,
Is that how he says it?
Yeah.
No, he was doing this weird kind of over the top acting in season 3, which I absolutely hated. In this one, he's completely hardcore, like back to season 1 hardcore Hopper. Cool. So I appreciated that. 11 was good. She got her hair cut and looks like the old school character. The Will character, that was a weird one. Netflix does this weird thing where they like to do like these sort of like weird gay jump scares for diversity. And it seemed like they were pushing that character in a direction. Like, what is going on with him? Like, it's just these weird, kind of fawning over Mike moments. Like, I don't know if that was meant to be a Netflix diversity thing or if it was just weird acting choices, but that's a character I wanted to become a wizard ever since season 1, where the slug fell out of his nose and he was having these weird powers. I wanted him to have weird, like, upside down powers where he can like either like snap between dimensions or something really cool. But the Mike and Will character didn't really do anything.
Okay.
But at the end of the season, Will got this weird spider sense tingle. It's like, oh, okay, maybe next season, maybe he'll level up and become a wizard and things will be
Wizard
awesome.
Harry.
Yeah. So anyways, that's my weird kind of random recap and analysis of season 4.
Okay, well, I like it. I'm kind of, I'm trying to see if I can find some space in the schedule to get caught up on Stranger Things and get right to the end of season 4. So
yeah,
fingers crossed.
Because it does ramp up. Because I would say season 1 is one of the best television experiences I've ever had in the history of the universe. Season 2, it was kind of hit and miss, but the Pumpkin Patch Ghostbusters, those 2 episodes were epic. Everything else is like meh. Season 3 was trash. Beginning of season 4, trash, but then it ramps up like at an epic rate where the finale is like, okay,
all right,
pretty good. As Larry David would say, pretty good.
All right, you got me sold. So also that came out this week on Friday was the last episode of season 3 of The Boys. What's it called? The Insta White Hot Wild. So this episode is it's the end of the season, so they gotta go out on a big note, and they really do. So the big revelation at the end of the last episode was that Soldier Boy is Homelander's dad. Do
you know if that's in the comics?
I don't think it is.
Because I did read Hero Gasm this week.
Yeah, it's
and that would be weird if that was the case.
Yeah. So basically what they did is they took some of Soldier Boy's baby batter and used that to create Homelander. So I don't know if they used like a female ovum or they just made him a clone, but he has a different power set. He has the super strength, but he can fly, has the eye beams, so on and so forth. So it starts with, I said, Homelander now knows that Soldier Boy is his dad. The one thing that Vought always kept from him growing up is they never let him have a dad figure, and it was the one thing he always wanted. So anyway, it starts off. Homelander's now figured out where his son Ryan is. That's the boy that he had with Butcher's wife, who has the same power set as Homelander. So he finds Ryan, and basically we don't know what happens to the CIA lady who's watching Ryan. We just don't know, and it's never discussed. So we're going to probably find out next season that she's been horrifically murdered, or she's perfectly fine, because there's really no middle ground. Now, in the light of Starlight's broadcasts and tricking Homelander to admitting, some wrongdoing to her live stream, the government's coming to Vought to do an audit. So the higher ups at Vought are freaking out because they've got Queen Maeve, kind of stuck in a cell, and they gas her in an attempt to transport her out. She uses that opportunity to escape. So she's on the run, and they all still want to kill Homelander. And then probably one of the hardest things is, so Noir comes back to Vought. He's trailed by in his head, he can see all these little animated characters who, again, as an animator, are animated beautifully. And he comes in and he interrupts a meeting between Deep and Homelander. Homelander says something to Deep and sends him off, comes over to Noir, and they talk a bit. And Homelander admits that Soldier Boy is his dad, because Noir says, we have to kill him. We have to kill Soldier Boy. We must. He has to die. And it's a really poignant scene where, Homelander comes over to Noir and he gives him a big hug. He's like, thanks for coming back. And then there's a sudden move, you hear a squelch, and he's holding his heart through his body and pulls his arm back out. Noir hits the ground, intestines spilling out everywhere, and Homelander just walks away, and all the animated characters are kind of dancing around Noir and like, oh, and then they're like, you just see them, the reflection of his goggles, and they're fading away, and that's him dying. And it was just like, oh God. It almost felt like a Game of Thrones sort of, like this was going to be a big game changer in the fight, and got taken out before we ever really got to see what he could do against Soldier Boy. So anyways, yeah. And then so we catch up with Butcher and Huey and Soldier Boy, and they're at a gas station on their way back to New York to attack Homelander at Vought Tower. Butcher knocks out Huey, kind of to save his life, because he knows if he takes another shot of this V24, it's going to kill him. They get to the tower, and there's another poignant scene where Soldier Boy comes up to Homelander and he's like, I hear you're my son. And yeah, it's like, man, I wish I would have been here. I could have helped raise you right and all this sort of stuff. And he's like, what? Raise you? It's like, yeah, because you're just such a fucking pussy. And it was just like, what? And he's like, I guess I got to kill you. And unfortunately, Homelander had brought Ryan with him. And at the start of the fight, Soldier Boy's got a hold of Homelander, and he's got him up in a choke. And the kid fires off his eye beams and hits Soldier Boy in the ribs, who smacks him with his shield, knocks him down. He's got blood coming up from the side of his head. Butcher shoots Soldier Boy. You just hurt his kid. And so it's Homelander and Butcher have temporarily teamed up to take out Soldier Boy. And it's a very epic fight. They're in the studio. Huey and Starlight show up, and Huey's trying to evacuate the building, because if Soldier Boy does his little radiation blow up, he's going to kill thousands in the building. So Huey's up in the control center trying to get people to evacuate. Starlight intervenes in the fight, and she's grossly outpowered until Huey turns up all the lighting and all the power in the room. And suddenly she's got so much power flowing into her feet come up off the floor, and she's floating. She's never flown before under her own power. She's never absorbed that much power to power herself up. So again, big fight going on. Maeve shows up, starts kicking the shit out of Homelander, because while he's stronger, she's more skilled. He ends up taking one of his thumbs and digs it into her eye. It's a very squelchy sound. I kind of cringed when I was watching. It's like, and it's like, oh God, he just ruptured her eyeball. And yeah, so the fight continues. Soldier Boy powers up his big radiation beam. Maeve tackles him out a window, rides him down as he blows up. Everyone's like, okay, Queen Maeve is dead. Because that beam, if you're caught in the explosion, it depowers you completely. So she never would have survived the fall. So at that point, everyone kind of does a whole like, all right, we're just going to go our separate ways, kind of retask. Then you find out the mission the Homelander gave him was to kill the guy who was going to become the VP, so that this what's her name, congressman woman who's secretly the head popper, can get named VP, which is some serious shit going on, because they're going to be their new target. You find out later Maeve survived, but she's powered down. She has no powers, won't get her eye back, arms kind of shattered. Soldier Boy, they get a hold of, stick some sort of gas on his face, and stick him into cold storage. Why kill him when you can simply pack him away in cold storage? Hell, the U.S. government did it with the Ark of the Covenant and Raiders. Just lose them in a warehouse.
Makes perfect sense.
Yeah. So there was a lot of... This episode had a lot of big things. I mean, they introduced Soldier Boy, and they kind of, at the end, they took him out of play. Kind of like what they did with the Nazi chick, Stormfront. She showed up, and then they took her to play by the end of the episode. So, or the end of the series. So it'll be, or season. So it'll be interesting to see how they tackle the next season, which has already been confirmed. So I'm looking forward to it. For me, it was a fun episode. It was a nice way of wrapping up this season. Had a couple of really big fights. But yeah, it was a fun show. So that was The Boys, which you still have to catch up on, Mike.
I still have to catch up on.
Yes.
But I did go track down Herogasm online. I just went, okay, the comic's got to be up here somewhere. So I did track it down. I didn't read the whole thing, but I did glance through it. I didn't realize that was an actual limited series. Like it was its own. It was
a 2-issue. It was, I think, 30.
It was like 6 issues or something like that.
2020. I mean, the meat of it was only like 2 issues. They had this big setup for it, because it was a yearly thing where they, it was like a dimensional rift would open, and the heroes had to go fight the
right.
bad guys.
That was the cover story.
The cover story.
And meanwhile, they fly to LA or wherever it was,
and drugs, sex, and alcohol.
Yeah. And it was kind of neat to see. I mean, I think the TV series did it justice, like by looking at the comic panels to looking at what was done. It's like, okay, the vibe's right. The other one was more that outdoor California party vibe, the outdoor swimming pools and a lot more crazy characters. Like the one looked like a Lego block monster in a pool, or like just weird, crazy stuff. But then the end, it was like the switch, like the last 2 issues, then it became like this weird kind of espionage kind of story.
So I think,
did you read those?
I did. I think, though, the way they handled it in the show worked because they had to film this during COVID. So the fact they got that many people on set at once was pretty amazing. I think there was a lot of comping going on. I don't think there was that many people in front of the camera at all times. I think it was just a lot of layering and comping to make it make the rooms seem like they were filled when they weren't.
Yeah.
And also, I mean, there's only so far they can go on TV before they just get slapped with an NC-17 rating and it goes up on Pornhub. So there's a limit to what they could do.
Yeah.
A terrible.
And then at the end, though, again, I didn't read it all the way. I just flipped through it real quick, but it did look like it turned into like full on government espionage. Like, I don't know if it was Air Force One in the comics, but it was like suddenly it went from a whole bunch of issues of just like weird, hardcore, raunchy stuff to it's like, whoa, now all of a sudden it's something completely different.
Yeah, that's what I mean. For me, Hero Gasm, I think it was only 2 issues that really dealt with the actual event. There was issues leading up to it, and then issues kind of getting away from it. Just because it was, I mean, even I think the thing I read about it was something like even writing it was a chore, because how do you introduce something that just rocks people's foundation of what superheroes are doing? Like, how do you do that in such a way that people don't just go, oh God, this should be like in the back pages of Penthouse or something?
Yeah. And then flipping through the pages online, I was like, oh yeah, this is why I didn't buy this series. This isn't quite my thing.
Yeah, it's not quite appropriate for children. So yeah, so that was the Boys. Also coming out this week, or came out this week on Wednesday, was Disney Plus's 5th episode of Miss Marvel. This was the obligatory time travel episode.
Obligatory.
Yeah, they always have to have at least some sort of time travel. So in this one, we get to find out about her great-grandmother, how she met her great-grandfather, how her grandmother has a story of, so during the separation of India and Pakistan, there was a lot of families that were ripped apart. And the family story is, their grandmother and her father caught the very last train out of India to Pakistan. But their great grandmother somehow didn't come with them. And at one point, the two got separated, and the grandmother followed stars back to her father, and that's how they were able to reunite and get on the train. So Kamala finds herself at that point in time when having the bracelet stab somehow sent her back in time to that moment,
as bracelets do,
as they tend to do. But we get a little bit of backstory of like why they were leaving India, because it was a big religious schism that was happening in India at the time, because Britain was pulling out, the British rule was pulling out of India. And so their governments were kind of like getting established, and there was harsh lines along the lines of religion. And so Pakistan was created. And anyways, it's actual history. So it's actually a really interesting read. So anyways, they get to the train sequence, and Kamala's there, and she meets up with her great grandmother who's been stabbed and is dying. And she says, you have to save them. And so she meets up with her grandmother, who's a small child at this point. And she's starting to realize the stars that her grandmother always talked about seeing, she created, because she gives her steps, to these glowing steps to step on. At one point, they shatter and turn into little like motes of light that are floating, and they just happen to lead her back to her dad. So the story's true, that it was like shining stars that led her back to her dad, and that's how they reunited. And Kamala realizes that if she hadn't gone back in time, her grandmother never would have reunited with her father and gotten to Pakistan. But it's almost like that whole time travel paradox. If she hadn't have been there, it wouldn't have happened. She never would have been born. So she had to go back in time. So she gets popped. After that happens, she gets popped back to the present. The other group, the clandestines, are there, and by stabbing the bracelet, it's started the rift. The rift between the two worlds has opened. But when they go through it, the energy hits the person, kind of turns them to a stone that crumbles, and you see the skeleton briefly before it all crumbles into dust. So it's lethal to them. But they also realize they have to stop the rift, because if it starts to expand, the earth is going to be engulfed by it, and it'll not be good. It's one of those, like, where the hell are the Avengers at this moment in time? Why aren't they here dealing with it if it's this big of a deal? And so the leader of the clandestines sacrifices herself, but she basically forces her power out of herself to be sent to her son, who's nowhere around, as she's dying. So it's closed. Kamala and her mom and her grandmom are all like, kumbaya, all happy family. We cut back to the US, where the clandestine's kid meets up with Bruno, who we don't talk about, the Tony Stark wannabe kid. Turns out Cameron has now got these powers that his mom gave, which are very similar to Kamala's. So Cameron has sought out Bruno for refuge because he's got no one else. Everyone that he has relied on is now dead. And Bruno, who happens to be an orphan, kind of, they start seeing a little bit eye to eye, but then they're attacked by a Department of Damage Control drone. Cameron fires out a blast. It gets destroyed, but when it crashes to the ground, the resulting explosion blows out Bruno's store. He runs like a little convenience store that his parents left him, and it blows out the entire store. And that's where the episode ends. So hopefully the sixth episode, this last episode, is going to kind of explain, I know we don't talk about Bruno, but what the fuck happened to his store? So it's left, like most cliffhanger episodes before the finale, it has answered some questions, but left some big ones for the finale to answer. So was it a great episode? But it was fine.
So where's it land for you now? I know one episode away from finishing the whole thing.
I think
on the whole Disney Marvel TV show thing.
I think they're going to be true to form and somehow fuck it up. They really are. It feels like they're heading that way. I know this one's got a slightly different trajectory because they know there's a movie coming after. Like this is set up for the movie. So it's got to dovetail into the movie. I'm assuming the movie has been written, and at least they're in the process of making it, or if it's not already done. But yeah, it feels like a lot of filler.
Is there a villain in the series? Like
so far,
a bad guy?
Well, it was the clandestines were one set of villains trying to get the power to send themselves home, and the other villain is the Department of Damage Control. Because
they're not a villain, they're heroes.
I know. Well, they're doing the whole like they're the government agency trying to track down and police the superheroes, and it's like I thought that was Sword's job, but
yeah, damage control should just mop up the mess.
Yeah, damage control should be it's repairmen and janitors. They're armed with mops and bricklaying trowels. Like that's supposed to be what they're supposed to be armed with, not drones and tracking down.
Hulk smash, damage control. Oh, mop it up.
Yeah, mop it up, fix it up, make it look like it didn't happen. So that was Miss Marvel.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, earlier this week, so there was a series that a series came out on Disney called Amphibia. It ran 3 seasons. 3 seasons? 2 seasons? 3. Yeah, 3 seasons. Both my daughters enjoyed it, but my younger daughter Ramona loves this show. Now, I'll do a quick overview of it. This show was done in what has been dubbed as the CalArt style. It's a very simplified design so that they can, in theory, focus more on animation. Like Gravity Falls, The Owl House, Amphibia are all part of this simplified but still solid drawing style, CalArt style, even though who knows where it came from. Anyway, so the whole show is chronicling the adventures of this. She's a Thai American girl named Ann Boon Choi. On her 13th birthday, she's kind of peer pressured into stealing this mysterious music box that when her and her friends Sasha and Marcy are standing around and they click the key and open it, there's a flash of light and all 3 are transported to the world of Amphibia, which is like a wild marshland tropical sort of world. Has anthropomorphic amphibians and just a whole host of dangerous animals like enormous reptiles and snakes and flying creatures. And Anne she lands near Wartwood, which is inhabited mainly by frogs. She's taken in by the planters, who is her best friend is this young kid named Sprig, wears like a leather cap with goggles on his head. His younger sister Polly, who's like a little pollywog, she's just has a tail. She later develops arms and then legs. She's also very frighteningly violent, or wants to be violent, but lacks the physical capacity. And then their grandfather, who's very overprotective and very traditional, Hot Pop. And the first season is mainly her and Wartwood, and the adventures they have. And she can't travel to the capital because the it's like the season's wrong. Like there's a big ice wall separating Wartwood from the capital of Amphibia. By the end of season 1, that wall has started to melt. She's gained acceptance from the people of Wartwood, who still view her as some sort of terrifying mammalian creature. And we find out that one of her friends, Sasha, joined up with the Toads, who are the Frog's mortal enemies, because the Toads are bigger, much more violent and brutal. And she defeats Sasha in one-on-one combat. Season 2 is them getting to they go to Newtopia, which is the capital. There they find out Marcy, that's where she landed. She's the smart one of the group. All her innovations have really, like, the Newtopia had embraced her with open arms. And they are in the process of trying to restore the powers of the gems found in on the top of the music box to send them home. At the end of the season, we find out that the king, who is very well voiced by Keith David, the voice of Goliath from the Gargoyles, he has plans for the girls, but more importantly, he has a plan for the box, but we don't know what it is. Season 3, so at the end of season 2, there's this big fight where the king's plan is revealed, that he's going to use the box to invade Earth. He's going to make a portal big enough to transport his flying city in and conquer Earth, because their level of technology is well beyond Earth. Big fight happens. Next thing you know, Anne and the Planter family, the 3 frogs, are back on Earth. And it's their fun misadventures as the government's trying to figure out who are these frog creatures. They don't know who they are. They're shadowy, whatnot. And Anne has figured out she has some sort of power. She kind of like Super Saiyans it up. Big glowing blue hair, big blue energy field, and she can fly. But it lasts very, very, very limited time, and then she's wiped after doing it. So the season 3 progresses where they finally figure out a way of getting back, and find out that everyone in Newtopia is now attacking the capital. They're trying to bring down the king because they're realizing just how much of a dick he is. And he succeeds in using the box and bringing his main palace to Earth. And the last 2 episodes are mainly the fight on Earth and then the fight back in Newtopia, as they push it back into Amphibia. And then in probably, as my estimation, probably one of the best season or series finales ever.
Best season finales ever.
Yeah, ever of any sort of animated show.
That's pretty bold.
Even like it is a pretty bold statement, but you got to remember. So, in my opinion, Avatar: The Last Airbender, the animated show, not the movie, not that horrible Shyamalan movie.
I don't believe that even exists.
Yeah, well, that series, in my opinion, is probably one of the best animated shows to be on TV in the last 20 years, maybe in the last 30 years.
Definitely the best animated American ones.
Yeah, I mean, I would say the last 20 years, because Batman the Animated Series is probably just a hair above it. Not a lot, but I mean, Avatar: The Last Airbender has been a very high benchmark for any new shows that come along.
Okay, for me, when I was watching Avatar, was watching it with the family, was binging it, and then I had a trip to India for work. Just like the last 6 episodes. So the last 6 I watched in India, which I don't know, for some reason it just even amped it up more, just because you're in a strange land and you have these kind of ethnic characters that kind of fit with the environment you're in, and I'm on a personal journey and they're on a journey and it's all epic and everything's amazing. So I understand what you're getting at. Yeah. Avatar: The Last
Yeah, so
Airbender
this
is pretty
last
hardcore.
episode of Amphibia, it's probably one of the hardest things is, so the characters are, they have to defeat this king who it turns out it's more than just the king, it's the king's dad, and the culmination, it's almost like a hive mind computer brain they've hijacked Marcy for a physical body, but they're the ones who are pushing for the invasion. They won't need to take over the earth because they want Earth's resources. And it's they call it the core, and it's like this helmet has multiple eyes, and there's eyes all through it. It's a big thing. Anyway, so Anne's struggling to use her powers to defeat the core and the king. And they finally do at the end of the second last episode, but the core in a final bid to almost like a bit of, well, if I can't win, you aren't. If I have to lose, so do you. So the core has a secondary base on Amphibia's moon that orders the moon to fly towards the planet. It's going to crash the moon into the planet as a giant fuck you. So
didn't they make a movie on that Moonfall?
Yeah,
that something that came out recently.
I don't even want to mention that.
Okay.
That was just just seeing the trailers was bad enough.
All right, say no more.
So the girls are like, well, we have to do something, and they're given an option to they can use each, like, so there's 3 gems, one for each girl sort of thing. Each has its own power. They can power themselves up like Anne does and try to go take on the moon, like push the moon away or destroy it or do something. But they're not as conversant with the power as Anne is, because she's been using it for a while. So she can hold it longer. And there's a prophecy, though, that one person can grab the power of all 3 stones, but to do so, they're going to, at the cost of their own life. So they can use the power of all 3 stones, but then they're going to die right afterwards.
That sucks.
Yeah. Anne realizes this. And so when her 2 friends, Sasha and Marcy, powers fade, she takes the other 2 gems, takes all the power, and blows the moon up and destroys the core, but then has sacrificed herself. She's dead. She awakens in purgatory, and she meets the guardian of the stones, who has resurrected her in a new body and gives her the ultimate offer: be my successor. I've judged you worthy. You're the only person who has ever taken all 3 stones and used it for a good purpose, not for their own selfish needs. Be my successor. Basically, be the new god. And Anne's like, I can't, because I'm 13. I haven't lived enough of a life to take that sort of thing. And the guardian's like, you know what? You're right. So, yeah, I'll tell you what. We'll come back to this conversation after you die. I'll see you in 78 years. And as she's sending her back, she's like, wait, I'm 78 years. Like, she now knows exactly how long she's going to live for. So the girls, she appears back on the planet, and in her pocket she's got 3 slivers of those gemstones, so they can make one portal once. So there's tearful goodbyes. They step through, and you figure, okay, they'll get back somehow. We cut forward to 10 years, 10 years later sort of thing. Sprig has grown up, so has Polly. All the characters have grown up. They've moved on. Sprig and his girlfriend are now, dating pretty heavily and look like they're going to get married. There's a statue of Anne that's been created in Wartwood. But then we also jump to Earth 10 years later, where Sasha and Marcy meet up at the airport. And we find out, like, Marcy works for, the Marcy girl works for a tech company. Sasha is a psychologist of all things. And Anne works at the Aquarium of the Pacific as a herpetologist dealing with frogs. And they surprise her on her 10th on this birthday, which now she's 23 or something, and that's how this whole show ends. It just ends there. And it was just such a nice, because they the last two episodes, it just keeps building and building and building and building. You get like a setback, and then they charge forward, and it looks like they're winning, and then suddenly they're losing, and it just battled back and forth. And then into the last episode, it was, you reach that point where we've won. Here comes the moon. Okay, we can beat back the moon. No, we can't. And the hero has to make that ultimate sacrifice. Sacrifice themselves, not knowing if they're going to win. Actually, no, knowing they're going to win if they do it, but knowing they're not going to survive if they go through with it. And
right,
when you've been with this character for 3 seasons like this, it's a hard choice to see her, realize that she has to do this. This is not something she can ask her friends to do or anyone else to do. She has to do it herself, and she willingly does it. She takes the power, she sends her 2 friends back, and she powers up, destroys the moon. And then they're like, oh, look. And then the 2 land, and they're like, and where's Anne? And they're just like, no, she's up there with all the debris. And it's a hard moment. And because the thing is it goes to commercial right at that moment. And you're left with like, well, fuck. Is she what's gonna, like, are these 2 girls now stuck on Amphibia, and Anne's dead? And so when they come back, and you're in purgatory with her, and she's like, she's sitting in front of a crappy old computer, and it's like this, the voice thing that's like the guardian of the gems is typing, is like text speaking. She's like, dude, you're like 10 years back. You're like a generation back. People don't text on an old iMac anymore. And so it's a color IMAX stuff. So it was nice to see her in purgatory. And then when they do that whole little monologue of like, you can take over, I'm too young. Well, see you in 78 years. And then to see, it would have been, I don't know, too much of a fan service of, oh, well, now she has the power to travel back and forth between the 2 worlds, and her and Sprig, friends forever, that sort of bullshit. But to make them have to sever that connection, and then it was like, all right, go to commercial, go to cut credits, and then they show 10 years later, and you see how everyone has moved on for the better in some ways from that experience. And it's, as I said, it was a great series finale. It gave me everything I needed to be content with the series. Because there's so many shows that they'll have like the series finale, and you're left go with like, but you still left so many questions unanswered, but you're never coming back to this. Why? I hate you. Stuff like that.
Well, the thing I find interesting about all the stuff you just said, because I've never heard of this series before until you mentioned it, and I looked it up. And it's a very simple animation style. Like, it's very Saturday morning cartoon, very
the design style is very simplistic,
characters.
But it allows for them to spend a little bit more effort into the animation. Some of the animation is just beautiful to behold.
Yeah, and it's neat because, like, based on the description you just gave, like, I wouldn't expect that from an animated series that with that design.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
And it's neat. Again, being animators, it's cool when a simplified character story can have something with that kind of impact.
Yeah, and this one, I think, watching the 3 seasons, this show is the perfect epitome of the hero's journey. From stranger in a strange land, and you see her fail so often. She tries things and fails so often. And at one point, she gets training from a sword master, this Newt sword master that trains her. He's training her to rob a train.
Trained by a Newt?
Yes, a Newt. But he's training her actually to rob a train.
Okay.
But he's got to get her up to speed in her sword skills to make it worthwhile. And then that later on, when she's facing down Sasha and other people, it's like, okay, well, that's part of the hero's journey, is that training. You don't suddenly show up like a 13-year-old girl with like master sword skills or anything like that. But
no, you have to get trained by a Newt.
You have to get trained by Newts. But you see how her progression as the seasons go on, she becomes a little bit more confident. We see that hero's journey of, gaining confidence in their skills, confidence in the people around them, and then culminating to that big final battle, and then what happens after. And it was a delight to watch that. Because I mean, for me, as I said, I'm going to quickly jump back. So Avatar: The Last Airbender, great. To me, that last season felt so forced. It
Of
felt,
Avatar?
yeah, it felt like they were told, "This is your last season, guys. We're not going to let you do 4 books." Because it was the Book of Water, the Book of Earth, Book of Fire, and I expected there was supposed to be a Book of Air after, and we never got to see that. So they felt like they just kind of tried to, well, shit, we got to cram this into 7 episodes. Bam, and Aang masters firebending. He just does it, and even though he
That's funny.
struggled,
I didn't get that. I thought it landed. I thought they landed the ending.
I thought the
didn't feel
ending
the
was nice,
force.
but I think the setup to it was a little forced and a little rushed. It just felt like they had other plans, and then we're told at the last minute, oh, by the way, guys, we know we got episode 1 of season 3 in the can, but this is your last season. This is it. So you got to make some changes. So
That'd be curious. I'd be interested to research that. I wonder if that was the case or.
Yeah, it just felt like it was. That was the only problem I had with season 3 of The Last Airbenders. It just they tried to. It felt like they tried to move the story along so fast when there was stuff that they was gonna nicely like the whole Uncle Iroh in jail and working. I mean, I wanted to see that stretched out more.
Okay,
but they had to get it done quick, and yeah, so that was my opinion of that one. But this, as I said, Amphibia was to me a very good telling of a hero's journey, from start to finish. So yeah, I heartily recommend it to our listeners and to anyone else. Watch it from season 1 all the way through. There's really no bad episodes. It's sometimes they feel like filler, but what is filler in an episode later on, there's it pays out. So yeah.
So do you know anything about the creator of the series? I'm just looking it up now. Matt Braley. I don't know if that's how you say it.
Let's see.
Matt Braley. I don't know if he's done anything else before, but yeah, anytime somebody makes a series that's people rave about, I'm always curious about them.
Yeah. I believe, yeah, he worked at DreamWorks. He worked on Gravity Falls, worked on Big City Greens. Amphibia was basically like his baby. He's a young guy, he's 33.
Yeah.
From California. Went to Cal Arts. So yeah. I think a lot of the group that the guy who does Gravity Falls, Alex Hirsch, went to Cal Arts. I think Big City Greens is the same thing. The Houghton brothers. I'm not sure, but yeah, there's a very synonymous style with like Big City Greens, the Owl House, Amphibia, Gravity Falls. They all have that very simplified design style that lends itself to allowing because if you're not trying to animate 9,000 lines on a character's face, you can spend a little bit more time on the animation and less time on shift and trace. So yeah, so I said I watched the series finale, and I'm really glad that my daughter insisted that we watch it as a family, because it was fun. It was really fun.
It's always great when the kids recommend something.
It is.
The parents go, yeah, good pick.
Well, the thing is I mean, sometimes like I can't keep up with some of the shows because life, but my daughter, especially Ramona, she just goes through all the different streaming services we have, and she'll find a show and she'll just binge it through. Like my older daughter Josie, when she found Avatar: The Last Airbender, she binged that thing in like a week and a half, like all 3 seasons. And the whole time she's like, Dad, you got to see this show. And I'm like, uh-huh. And she's like, and then this guy Aang, I'm like, and I was up to the point I didn't realize she was watching Avatar. And I'm like, Aang, you mean Avatar: The Last Airbender? She's like, yeah. I'm like, honey, I watched those when they first came out. I watched the whole season until all 3 seasons. Oh, we got to watch it again. I'm like, okay, we'll watch it together. Well, just the last episode. All right. We'll watch the Fire Lord get his comeuppance. So yeah. And then I told her, well, it carries on with Cora, and so that's what she's went with next. But yeah, so yeah, my daughters will they'll watch things and they'll be like, Dad, you got to see this. And sometimes they come up with these really nice little gems, and yeah, pass the savings on to our listeners.
Yeah. Avatar is an interesting one because I never watched it when it first came out. But when the movie was released and there's the massive backlash and all the hate and all the fandom rebelling against it, it's like, oh, if there's that much of a backlash, the original must be really good. It's like, I have to watch this cartoon.
Yeah,
and I wasn't disappointed.
Where was I? Was I at Mercury at the time? And there was a couple of people talking about it because it was really inconsistent. It was like Friday nights it was on. And I worked most Friday nights. So I went home, late one Friday, and I caught like the last 10 minutes of like halfway through. I think it was like halfway through the first season. Caught an episode like last 10 minutes. And I was like, well, shit, I gotta see more of this. So went online, started watching the episodes, caught up, and then it was trying to figure out a way to get home in time on Friday nights to watch the new. I think I only managed it once, so I was always like the next day watching it, and yeah, so I was watching pretty much as they were coming out. So yeah, when the movie came out, I was so disappointed.
Yeah,
that movie was garbage. Like, just how could you take it has that much backstory and that much design and just shit all over it?
Now here's a question, because apparently Netflix is doing the live action.
I've seen still from that. It looks good.
The visuals look interesting, but I heard that the original creators bailed from it because they didn't like the direction Netflix was going with it.
Yeah, that's what I heard, is that they kept butting heads with the heads at Netflix.
Yeah, Netflix wanted it to be more adult and edgy and all that, because that's what had me excited, is the original creators were attached to it.
Yeah,
it's like, oh snap! Like, if they can bring the same magic.
Yeah, it was something like they were going to be able to tell the story they wanted to with more freedom, so there was more areas they could expand out and explain.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, this is going to be good. And then like, no, we left because it's the show's not going the direction that we agree with, and we figure it's just better to cut our losses. And when they said cut our losses, I was just like, oh,
I know, like my heart broke, because like Netflix has made so many, in my opinion, bad choices with stories.
Yeah,
and just like kind of twisting and breaking things in bad directions. And to do that with Avatar, it's like, oh no. Like,
yeah,
it could have been beautiful.
When you get your hands on a property like that with such a proven track record,
with the creators attached.
Yeah, why antagonize them? What's the mindset? Like, I admit I went through this when I was doing design work, and we would get these. I think I've mentioned before, we get these notes from producers of like, Hawk looks too fierce, or this or like backpack looks, or boots look too big, and it's like, the design we're sending you is for the backpack. The boots have been approved like at least a year, but we get these stupid notes, and it's these producers that feel like they have to chime in to justify their existence. Otherwise, people will be like, well, why are we paying this guy? We haven't heard from him in 2 months. He hasn't said anything. He's either okay with everything or he's just not reading his emails. So they'll chime.
No, I'm worth my salary. I've changed things 5 times.
Yeah, exactly.
Wait, why are you changing it?
And I remember there was, oh God, it was like a zebra. And the first design, it looks too much like a horse. Okay. So the design got changed again. Design is too complex. Okay. So we took out some of the stripes. Overall horse design, unfavorable. And we're like, what does this guy want? So we sent him, it looked like a stuffed animal version, like pipe legs, blocky little feet, couple of stripes. His was not not horse-like enough. So we sent him the first design. Perfect.
That's actually a trick that I've heard with animation too. It's like when a director or someone who's giving comment, they don't know what they want, and you're pretty sure your idea is really good. And they start asking for comments. You just like throw something like that at them, and then not like that. It's like, how about like this? The first thing I delivered, yes, approved.
Well, we ended up, so we had the director with us at the studio, and he said, tell you what, can you cut and paste the images and just kind of move them around the page? They're not in the same places. So if he compares the first image you sent him and this one, they don't just lay perfectly one on top of the other. I was like, absolutely. 5 minutes in Photoshop, move stuff around, flattened it, made it a JPEG, gave it to the director. He sent it off, and it came back approved. And we were just like, and that was like almost a month of going back and forth with this one producer who had never chimed in ever. He just, something about this zebra rankled him. And it almost held up production because we finally got that design approved on the Friday. And on Monday, the production company was starting that episode with this stupid zebra. And it was like, we were that close. And the thing is if we didn't deliver all the designs to the production studio on schedule, we were fined. If the production studio did not deliver the episode by the carved in stone date, they were fined. And if they could say that the fault was because the design studio did not give them the designs by that date, we were fined again. And so, I mean, we were facing a couple of sets of fines, and not insignificant fines. Like we were even told these fines are not small. These are big fines. Like 3 fines would wipe out most of the profit that we were making. 4 fines is basically everyone's out on the street at the end of the production cycle. And it was just like this one guy just could not let it go. Like and we would like go in and just be dreading, like, did the memo come in? Because we would get memos every Monday, every Wednesday, and every Friday for design changes. And we'd go in and it's sure enough, top of the page, a fucking zebra is there again. And you're just like, oh my God.
I love that you just had to move it to a different spot on the page and it was approved.
Oh, crap. No, it was just he would just chime in because we would have it listed by producer and then their comments for the episode and what designs. And his name started with an A. His last name started with an A. So he's always at the top of the page. Before the zebra incidents, his name was at the page and there would be just blank, blank, blank. Nothing. This zebra shows up and his was like a full page every time of just his effing comments about this goddamn zebra.
Dude likes zebras.
I don't know. And that was when the director basically said there are producers that, to justify their office, feel they need to chime in on stuff they have. So that's why we would get the comment, like, it's a design of a character that's approved, and we put a backpack on them. So we have like a front view, like front 3/4, back 3/4, and a couple of the backpack from like backpack open, backpack closed, and the stuff like that, the strap details, shit like that, and on the character. And the one guy got fixated on the shoes on the character. Those were the stock shoes. Those don't change. Those haven't changed since the first season. This is like season 3. Yeah, but they feel like and we would get like a scan with a red marker around the feet, and it's just like, oh God, how do you even work there?
Okay, something that scares me is Taika Waititi would say, asking Natalie Portman if she was interested in being in a Star Wars movie.
Yeah,
do you hear that one?
Yeah, I heard that one, and someone had to explain to him she was in 3 of them.
That makes me scared.
Defense was he didn't recognize her from those movies because she's aged in a way that it didn't look like her when he'd watched those films. He'd never put 2 and 2 together. And I'm
That's hilarious.
I mean, that is kind of funny. It's also kind of funny that, I mean, he's been given the chance to make a Star Wars series, anything he wants.
Yeah.
And
it's like, hey, do you want to be in it? I've already been in it. Oh.
I mean, she could.
She could.
Yeah, but yeah, so I'm still excited to see Love and Thunder. I've been trying to actively avoid any spoilers. Although I did overhear someone saying there was nothing new to the film, like there's no characters that you haven't really seen before, but it finishes the narrative on several characters. So I was like, okay. So we'll see. But they did say you have to stay right to the last goddamn credit, because there's of course, cutscenes every like those end credit scenes. There's one right at the final, Marvel disappears, and then there's an end credit scene. So
Maybe I'll have to see this one with Troy. Troy, want to see a movie?
So yeah, I was saying it's. I've been told this sets up the chance to do a Thor 5. I don't know if Hemsworth wants to do a 5. I don't think he would unless Waititi, like Taika, was doing a 5. But I don't know if he even wants to do a 5. So we'll see. But yeah,
he'll do it.
Why not? It's funny. I see pictures of him on set. He's always dressed in a suit when he's the director, like suit and tie the whole time. So yeah, stay classy. All right, so I think that's going to wrap us up here, unless there's anything. I was going to mention a quick thing. So DC still has 3 movies coming out between now and Christmas.
Is The Rock in all of them?
He's at least 2 of 3. He's in the League of Superhero Pets. He's the star of Black Adam, and maybe he's going to show up at the end of Shazam: Fury of the Gods.
He's got to show up. If they're releasing them that close together, he's got to show up.
Yeah. So if he is, then yeah, he's going to be in all 3 of DC's movies. Like, save this franchise. Wonder Woman didn't do it. 1984 just was. So save this franchise, Dwayne.
I'm still shocked by 1984. I thought they were going to knock that out of the park, and they didn't.
I thought so too, but
swing and a miss.
That was a big swing and a miss. So yeah, it's. I think it's so next week. Is it? Hold on, let me check. So it's the. What's it? Okay, that's the 29th. So the end of the month, DC League of Super Pets.
And that's theatrical?
That's theatrical release, yeah. Just double checking, make sure. Yes, theatrical release. Yeah, it won't be coming on HBO, at least yet. And then Black Adam, I believe, is October. Yep, October 21st is Black Adam. We have Wakanda Forever, so that's Marvel's only fire back. Happens November, and then
I wonder what's going to happen with that movie.
Yeah, me too. It's they're keeping that under wraps really well. I kind of enjoy that they're not even letting toys spoil, who is what.
And there's so many variables, like
there is.
Yeah, so much stuff going on. That's going to be an interesting one. I'm curious to see just what happens there. Like, what's the story they have to tell?
December.
We'll see.
Shazam: Fury of the Gods is December 21st. 1 week after Avatar: The Way of Water. So, so there's going to be three DC movies. They're pushing hard, like really hard, aren't they? All right, we'll see.
Yeah, cashing in on The Rock, man.
Dwayne Johnson, and they haven't listed the cast for Shazam. I mean, they wouldn't, if he's going to show up in a cameo role, they're not going to put him in the cast list. So, yeah, at least not yet. So, yeah, that'll be an interesting now to Christmas. See if DC can, limp their way out of the fire. And we're right back into the frying pan, whichever it happens. It's just I've never seen a company struggle so hard to just make live action films. Anyways, I think we're gonna.
Peacemaker was great.
Yeah. That was a good one. That's best.
Suicide Squad.
Peacemaker had the best intro.
Best intro ever.
The Suicide Squad, which was far heads and shoulders above Suicide Squad.
Just had to add the. That's all you had to do.
Turns out that's what you need is the. Don't make it a Suicide Squad. Make it the Suicide Squad.
That's how you make $1 billion.
Yeah, not Justice
However
League.
much they made.
The Justice League.
Yes.
Not Batman. The Batman.
Right. That makes all the money.
It's like Batman. Was there like a whole waiting room full of them? I just want the Batman. I don't want a Batman.
No. A Batman? Get out of here.
So give me the Batman. There should only be one. All right. So we'll wrap that up here. So for all our fun people who've been, listening through this whole podcast, I'm not going to ask you why, because at this point, it's obvious you know why. You just like to torture yourselves. But we've had fun talking, or at least I've had fun talking. I'm assuming Mike's had fun talking.
I've had fun listening.
Yeah. That's half the battle. G.I. Joe. So we hope to return, and we're really, really swinging for, Gavin and Troy to bring this duo back to a quartet.
Hint, hint, nudge, nudge, wink, wink, say no more.
Exactly. Clear your calendars, boys. Let's make this happen. Anyways, good night, folks, and happy
Good night.
Should we do a collective goodbye?
Let's do it.
2, 1.
Collective goodbye.
Wow, with two of us, it's still horrible. All right.
The quartet, at least we can shove the blame onto 2 other people.
Yeah, usually Gavin. All right. Good night, folks.
This has been Geeking Off the Page, a Planet Geek production. Please be sure to subscribe, share, rate, and review. You can find us at our social medias through Facebook, YouTube, and TikTok. Search for Planet Geek Productions. On Instagram and Twitter, Planet Geek Pod. Or you can send us an email at planetgeekpod@gmail.com. So until next bat time, same spider channel, may the force be with you, and thanks for tuning in.